The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests today are from the Bruce Grey Catholic School Board, and I welcome Gary O'Donnell, who is the Director of Education, and Laurie Castri, who is the Chair of the Board. Laurie, Gary, good to see you both again.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Now, it has been a while since we talked, and let's say there's been a lot of water that's gone under the bridge, like that big C word, COVID. And the question I have for you is, how is your school system doing as we move out of COVID? Gary?
Yeah, it's we're ending the school year different than how we began the school year. The school year began in full COVID protocols, and we're ending the school year. I just came back from our track and field meet in Kincardine today, where all of our elementary students are participating in track and field. So it has been a change, and it's been a journey. For the most part, our schools are returned to, and I don't like using the term normal, but kind of a normal delivery of programs and services. We're able to move forward with track and field meets and some year-end trips and all of the events that we hold dear to us as a Catholic school district. So definitely it's been a journey this year.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of the track and field meets are always the special event for the year end, but often grade 7, grade 8, there's a graduation year trip, and that also goes along with high school. Are any of those happening?
Yeah, so graduations, our regular graduation programs are attending. Some schools are having grade 7 and 8 year-round trips. Proms took place in our high schools, and the regular high school graduations are taking place next week. So we're ending the year celebrating those milestones with our students and looking forward to those celebrations.
What about the students who were caught in COVID, whose last year was last year? Did they get to come and have graduate? Will they be coming to graduation as well? And did they get their prom?
No, so those 2 years or those years during COVID, those classes did not, they unfortunately did not get their proms and their graduations. We found alternate ways to celebrate, but unfortunately, we're not able to find spaces big enough to bring everyone in to do a full graduation for those 3 years. But they were honored and celebrated during those times, and they were COVID-based celebrations. So. But we've returned to sort of normal graduations, if you will, and looking forward to celebrate our graduates.
Yeah, we have to use the word normal very carefully. Yeah. I think we have maybe best to say close to as things were.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're not there yet, for sure. Well, Laurie, is the school board back meeting in person, or are you still using virtual technology?
We have one more virtual meeting. We put a motion forward last fall to carry on virtually until June this year. So June should be our last, hopefully mark our last virtual meeting, and the new year will kick off on in person. Sure.
Well, I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
Absolutely. It'll be nice to get back to that regular practice, shall we say.
I'm sure.
I mean, in the middle of winter, the online option is wonderful for the, closed highways and need to reschedule things, but it keeps business going, so.
Yeah, I guess that's a bit of a practice change. That means that the school board can meet on its, you don't need to cancel meetings anymore. You can just switch to an online session, can you not?
In some cases, it's ministry driven, whether how we govern our meetings. So they put in place the option for online until I believe November.
Yeah.
And we motioned until June. We were the optimists, I guess, and figured by the end of the school year we should be back in person. So
Mm-hmm.
Or smaller committee meetings and whatnot. I think we might maintain a bit of an option there for a hybrid situation, especially through the winter months. But
Yes, sometimes the ministry in Queen's Park is a little distant from the reality of Grey Bruce.
yeah, I invite them always to come in February. Everyone who's not from the area, February is a great time to visit.
Oh, yes, yes, I understand completely. So, Gary, how would you assess the situation with respect to staff and students? There's been a lot of concern, certainly in the media, about the effects of COVID and on students, particularly the younger students. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think moving from in-person to virtual and back to in-person was challenging for both students and staff in that inconsistency. And the COVID protocols that we had to put in place, masking and cohorting, and those definitely were challenging. We're finding that as students are back, we're hearing less of that conversation. Not to say that there's not still things that we need to work on. We have a fairly comprehensive mental health and well-being team who are working with our schools and our students. But if you were at the track and field meet today and heard the laughter and the joy and the excitement, I think you would say that, okay, we're moving forward. And I think everyone is tired. I think it has been a long year. And I think it's the worry that folks have about COVID and moving back and forth between in-person and virtual. And so I think people are tired, and I think people are looking forward to the summer holidays. And today is a beautiful sunny day. And I think people are looking forward to that break and spending time with family and enjoying all that our area and region has to offer in the summertime. And hopefully we'll come back with that renewed sense of excitement and engagement. So I think we're getting there. I think we're moving forward. And like I said today, if you were in Kincardine at the track and field meet, you would hear that joy on the kids and the staff and the families. Lots of moms and dads, saw lots of grandparents out there today. And that's the joy that events bring.
Sure. Now, Lori, did you get to the track meet?
No, I did not get to the track meet today, but I've done many a good track meet in my time.
I'm sure.
It is great to see it back in action, though.
Yeah. Now, just looking forward, do you kind of have to keep in the back of your mind, okay, if we have to move forward with protocols because of an escalation in COVID cases, are you ready for that?
I think so. I think we've proven ourselves pretty ready since the first round, where we had plans A through Z, and we've been pivoting fairly well, I think, back and forth and following any sort of ministry-driven mandates and health and safety protocols, as well as can be expected in a pandemic. And I think should it have to happen again, we'd be prepared.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the January closure for that short period of time showed how quickly we could move and staff could adapt. I mean, they did an amazing job, all levels of our staff throughout the board. And I think what assisted us is that every student in our school board has their own device, or we can get them their own device. And that was once we kind of got into going out and coming back and kind of got those protocols and procedures in place, we could do that right away. So that makes that transition very smooth. And we know those families where internet, given our rural area where internet is a challenge, we've got solutions for them to be able to stay engaged. So we've had some little cell phones where they can use as a hotspot. We have outside Wi-Fi at our schools where they could drive up and kind of download and upload if they needed to. So we've kind of worked out some of those wrinkles, and we can move back and forth fairly quickly if need be, and all the other protocols that you need in place if we find ourselves back in that place in the fall where we need to move with protocols. But we're hopeful that that won't be the case.
Absolutely. I think we all feel that way. I think the other thing that this has taught us is that on one hand, as you mentioned, Gary, the internet gap,
Yeah.
and forced all of us to figure out what's the best way to do things. But we also recognize that internet access is increasing across Grey Bruce at a far faster rate than I had ever imagined. I mean, they're digging up Owen Sound right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some areas in our rural communities where it's a challenge, but we've got a solution. It's not the perfect solution. It definitely could be better, but it'll get us over a hump and allow that to support our families in that capacity should we be there. So, yeah.
Now, one of the side effects of COVID, and I'm not going to say it was, well, but let's call it one of the perhaps unexpected side effects is, well, is probably the HR issue, because the school systems found that, first of all, transportation became a challenge. Bus drivers were in short supply. And then teachers decided, well, I'm not sure I want to do this, continue this, or it's been a bit much and it's time to retire. And has that been an issue within your board?
I think that, the transportation issue, as you know, we share the consortium with our coterminous board at Blue Water. So getting bus drivers definitely has been an issue. I think COVID has impacted that. We've had to reduce the number of routes that we're running, which makes for longer run times. And we don't have temporary staff who will be able to fill in a pinch, so we've had to cancel routes. So that's an issue. That's an issue related to staffing and attracting bus drivers. I think we're all hopeful that that's something that we can move forward in resolving. Consolidating routes is not something that you want to do. However, it's something that needs to be done. So our transportation consortium will be looking at that and, planning bus routes based on the number of bus routes that they have going right now. And, if we are able to hire more staff and get temporary staff through the consortium, then hopefully that will lessen the number of daily canceled routes. Not due to weather. We're going to have weather cancellations. We know that. But it's the ones on a beautiful day like today, and you have a bus cancellation because we can't find a bus driver. So hopefully, as we move into the fall and get back to regular staffing levels, that can be resolved. But we appreciate how challenging that is for moms and dads every morning to wake up. And it's not the winter time. It's not January. In January, I check the bus routes, but I have to check in the good weather as well. So we appreciate how challenging that is for families as they're getting their day going.
And as I said to your colleagues in the Blue Water Board, if anyone's looking for a job, there's a possibility right there.
Yeah, now's the time for that shameless HR plug that their bus companies are hiring.
Thank you.
No, that's not shameless. That's reality. and this is community TV, so we can make a shameless plug, Lori.
Good.
Which brings us back to the other HR issue, and that's teachers.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone today who has moved up to Owen Sound in the last couple of years, and thought this gentleman had retired and is working as a crossing guard because he just likes to keep busy. But his spouse is a teacher who had retired. Yes, she's working. Are you finding that is the same? Is true in your board?
Yeah, we're finding shortages in daily occasional staff in some short-term occasional contracts. So due to COVID, staff had to isolate for 5 days if they were COVID positive or they had a COVID positive person in their household as the protocols move forward. So that's when we found it really acute. And we didn't have enough daily occasional staff to cover. There is a new crop of graduates, just convocations are happening as we speak. So we're actively recruiting teachers to teach here in Bruce and Grey, hoping some students will want to come home and live at home and teach, and also encouraging our retirees. As you mentioned, some retirees are looking for work. So trying to ensure that we have a good complement of occasional teachers in order to cover the daily occasional. For us, that's the acute issue. And that would go as well with our educational assistants and our early childhood educators, the same issues relative to, we have our full-time staff, it's the occasional staff where we and our board are struggling to find that. So hopeful as we move forward into the fall that others who are staying out of the workforce for COVID reasons will return back into work. And again, not a shameless plug, if you are looking for work as an educational assistant at ECE or a teacher, please navigate to our board website. And custodial day supply as well is an area that we're looking for. So there are opportunities for people who are looking for employment.
Yes, and you're allowed a shameless plug. That's not an issue, Gary, because we're going to get to another shameless plug about the board elections later, Laurie. So we'll get there too. But no, I think that there are opportunities in so many areas, and I know that I actually had a look at the board website, and hey, there's opportunities here.
Yeah.
So, and having been in a position myself where I retired and discovered after about 6 months, I didn't know what to do with myself, and started back to work and started doing more Rogers stuff as well as some other things. I know the feeling. So I'll personally endorse getting back to work if you wish. If you wish.
Right after saying congratulations on your retirement, the next line is, don't forget we're hiring for occasionals.
Yeah. Oh yes. It's always good to have that with a sense of humor. Yeah. It's absolutely essential. Well, let's move on to something that has created a few newspaper headlines, I must say, as well as media conversation, and that's the board's equity plan. I thought that was a very interesting plan that you've got going forward. What is the equity plan, Gary?
Sure. Thanks for asking about it. So, as a board, we did not have an equity plan. So we set out to set up a committee to look at putting together a plan. And they met for about 8 months or so. In that time, they had a thought exchange, and thought exchange is a way to conduct a survey. It's not like a Likert scale where you ask questions. It's more of, you would put out a provocation, people will respond to the provocation, and then people will like or dislike the comment. So we did that in early fall. We got good response, and that went to staff, to community members, to stakeholders. And then we met with our students. So we met with student senates at each of our high schools, BIPOC committees at our schools, and had good conversations with our students around what are the pertinent equity issues that are important for students, because we are here to serve our students, and they are our primary focus. And then as a committee, we worked through that. It's also important to note that our equity plan, the 4 pillars of our equity plan, are in line with the Ontario Education Equity Plan of 2017. So the province of Ontario does have an equity plan for education, and the 4 pillars in that plan we took those 4 pillars and brought them over to our plan to ensure that we are in alignment with the expectations of the Ministry of Education around the equity issue. So we did our survey, and then the committee set to work, and we worked fairly heavily on this plan. As you know, it's a fairly lengthy document with some key action items and key outcomes. And one of the interesting conversations, and Laurie can jump into this as well, because we talked about it at length, was our glossary of terms and where we were going to situate the glossary of terms and what terms should be included. I think it's really important that this equity plan, in terms of the glossary pieces, are really focusing on the educator and what does the educator need to know in the equity space. So if a student comes up and says, well, I'm not a male or a female, I am binary, the educator, the classroom teacher, the EA, the ECE needs to be able to answer that, or at least discuss, or to know in some context how to move forward with that information to ensure that they are meeting their obligations as educators until the Ontario Human Rights Code, the protected grounds, and to ensure that children are safe and well cared for and taken care of. So that's really kind of the focus of that glossary of terms. It's getting a baseline level of information to staff around language in the equity space, because what we heard from our staff is, I'm not really sure what to say. I don't want to misstep. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Help me out with this. So, and then we talked about, do we put it at the beginning of the document or the end of the document? And we thought the beginning might be fitting as staff are looking through that. And it's a place they can go back to and check. And it's really just for their professional reference in terms of using terms. And then we have 4 pillars. And within those 4 pillars, there's key outcomes in each of the areas. So that's kind of the quick overview of our equity plan.
Now, I guess what you're really saying, it's giving staff especially tools and a language, a common language, because in this situation where you're dealing with equity, language matters. And if everyone is using the same language, at least you are all talking in the same way, and a student knows that it doesn't matter who they go to, they'll get an answer that is consistent.
Yeah, and teachers will feel comfortable, or educators will feel comfortable in the language that they're using. It's important for educators to know that they have obligations under the Human Rights Code and as educators and under the Ontario Teaching Profession Act. So teachers are well aware of those obligations and the protected rights of individuals under that act. So we as a board have an obligation to ensure that our staff have the resources and tools and able to at least host those conversations. And we know those conversations are not necessarily conversations that teachers have with students, but they're family conversations. So we journey with families. So those are conversations and conversations that we have with families. We journey with our families.
Sure. Now, Laurie, how did you find that the conversation around the equity plan was as a board member, as chair of the board?
Well, I was lucky enough to be part of the committee as well, developing the plan under our superintendent, Kathy DeGuy. She sort of championed and led the meetings and arranged everything with us. And right from the get-go, created a very inclusive space, a very safe space for all of us and as diverse as we could be to gather. And we began with a conversation of here's where we are coming from, and here's where we're hoping to arrive together. And as Gary highlighted, the glossary of terms was a huge conversation point for us because we did all have different and varying opinions and of descriptions and terms and situations, and brought to the table that conversation. Sometimes it was a little more difficult and a little more sharing and a little less and a little easier. But we arrived to a pretty solid plan, I think. And it's important to note that this is our first draft. This is our first plan. It's a point of growth for us. And we are a school board. Education is key. And I think growing and learning together and in this safe space that we share, that we want to share with our students, is the underpinning tone of the entire equity plan. And at the board table, it was well received. Everyone was really happy to see everything in one nice plan and reference to the 4 pillars. And it refers back to our strat plan and all of our other, Indigenous education plans. And it ties, I'd say, Gary, wouldn't you agree, a collection of plans together quite nicely? Yeah. And is a good demonstration of everything we try to achieve as a board.
Now, some of the dare I say, the recognizable outcomes, and I'm going to choose one that's actually was a bit of a shock to myself, was that, my golly, there's a pride flag flying at St. Mary's Catholic School. Whoa!
There's a pride flag flying at every school in the school board.
That's exactly right. And there would be those who would say, huh? But is that, I take it from what I have read, that is actually part of the equity plan, is it not?
Yes, it is an intentional part of the equity plan. Mm-hmm. And it's not the first time we've flown flags on our Catholic schools. It's just the first time it's been part of our, this is our first equity plan. So it is just the first time it's been part of any plan with the board.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, no, and I think as we listened to our community, and in particularly listening to our students, it was something that they were hoping to see. And hoping to see it as a demonstration that we as a Catholic school board are accepting of all of our students, a visible sign of that acceptance. And I think it communicates further to everyone that our schools are safe and they are welcoming places to learn. And I think that was really important, an important sign. It was clearly stated to me from our student leaders that this is something at both of our high schools, that this is something that they were looking to see move forward. And they provided very good leadership. I mean, we are very proud of our students. The conversations that I hosted with them as the director of education, we as a community are in a very good space because our young students are future leaders and they are ready to lead, not in 5 years, they're ready to lead now. And they're courageous and they are inclusive. And I was really proud of the conversations we had with them and proud of their guidance. They were, I don't know if I would have said, talked to the director within frank terms that they did when I was in high school in the 80s. They were courageous, they were respectful, they were thoughtful, and they knew the pertinent matters of the issues at hand. So, yeah.
And these conversations began last year with our students too. We were meeting with them in this time last year.
Yeah.
Well, there was a recent letter from the St. Mary's students published online here in Owen Sound, and I read it and I was impressed. I have to say I was very impressed by the students who authored that. It was clear, respectful. And yeah, I think you're right. They're ready to step up and take leadership. Yeah. Not in 5 years now. Yeah. And if I can go back to Gary, is something I did say before we went to air, is that there was another issue that happened at St. Mary's just last couple of weeks. Yeah. And I was impressed for two reasons. Number one, there was a protest at the school, and as someone who went to high school back in the 60s and in the 60s and 70s, I'm thinking, yeah, the kids are all right. A little protest isn't a bad thing. But what impressed me was that there was a respectful response from the school staff, from the principal, and it was, okay, let's talk. Is that part just the way it is or these days, or is that part of the equity plan as well?
It's not specifically part of the equity plan, but I think it is the respect that we have for student voice. That student voice is an integral part of our school system. And the students had an issue. They felt that they needed to vocalize it. They did in a safe way. We always prefer students to stay in school because then we know they're safe. And, Principal Kirby met with the students and had respectful conversation and dialogue. And again, that's the way our democracy works. That's the way student governance works, that a deep respect for student voice, that you are going to be listened to. And if we can, we're going to action it or find a way to move forward. And I commend the school staff and I commend the students for working through complex issues. And I was very proud of how everyone handled the situation. And again, proves to me how how mature our students are and how thoughtful they are. And, for us in a Catholic school board, we have the Ontario Catholic Graduate Expectations. And in those conversations, I believe our students are demonstrating those in all of the conversations I've had with our young people. I have much hope and optimism as we move forward in our young people to lead.
Great. Well, believe it or not, we're going to have to take a break, and we'll come back to the conversation because, oh yeah, I got a lot more. Laurie, Gary, we will take a quick break, and friends, we will be right back. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Smudging is a very important part in our life as we're all learning to walk the good way. When we smudge, we use the sacred medicine, the white sage, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar. It cleanses negative energy and replaces it by a positive energy. When I smudge, I cleanse my end and my eagle feather and start cleansing my breath to have better words. I will smudge my eyes so I could see the better things offered to me. I will smudge my ears to hear the good thing that people have to say. I will smudge my hair to have good thinking from my head. I will bring the smudge to my feet so I could walk in respect with our Mother, the Earth. Smudging is the way we give our prayers to connect our spirit to the Creator. We express gratitude for the gift of life, the learning, and growth.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests are Gary O'Donnell and Laurie de Castri from the Bruce Grey Catholic School Board. And we're having some very interesting conversations about students, about COVID, and about a whole bunch of other things. And I've got a laundry list of stuff that I have for Gary and for Laurie. So welcome back to the both of you.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things that I was, it always helps to read the minutes. And I've said this on air before, that if you want to find out what's going on, at least have go and read the minutes. And I have. And I noticed the Norm Bethune Deep Caring Education Fund. What's that about? Who wants to tell me about that?
I can start. That is about honoring one of our greats, Norm Bethune. He's been with the board. I won't date him. Very long time. He was a teacher, a principal, and a stellar trustee. And so we've put together a fund to honor him. And I'll turn it over to Gary if you want to give the particulars of the fund. We can share this honor.
Sure, thank you. So this fund will be an opportunity for staff to fill in a grant application if there's a passion project that they have related to our virtues of Catholic deep caring and innovation, creativity. So in the fall, we will release that to staff. If staff have a passion project that might lie outside maybe of a school budget, something that they want to do, then they can submit an application. One of the criteria is it really needs to be work that's going to land on the student desk. It has to be focused on students, and we'll get together and we'll hand out as many grants as we're able to, depending on the funding. And it's all in, as Laurie said, in honor of Norm. And that's why we want it to be something that lands at the student desk, because that's where Norm's passion is.
Can you explain what the culture of deep caring is?
Sure. So we have 10 virtues in every month. We host and we honor a virtue. So this month is the month of honesty. And so schools will do announcements, and Norm gives the board a speech about the virtue of honesty. Other ones are respect and reverence, empathy. So each month has a focus on a virtue. And as a board, that's the virtue that we focus on here at the board office, but in each of our individual schools.
And this goes right down into the classroom, I presume?
Yes. Yeah. It's an integral part of the culture of our school district. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this fund, this Norm Bethune Deep Caring Education Fund, would be to enhance each of those virtues by a very practical project.
That's a great way to put it. Yes, it's exactly the intent, is to focus on the virtues, honor Norm, and to really, again, embed the virtues of deep caring within our school system.
It actually sounds quite intriguing to hear the idea of putting virtues, which are often seen as rather ethereal and not always practical, into practice. So this will be a challenge for the staff, I'm sure, to be very creative.
Our staff are very well versed in our virtues, so I don't think that's anything new. It will be aligning a project with the virtues. So that'll be the step. How am I visibly, actively living out the virtues through this project? Mm-hmm. So that'll sort of be the next step. Is there a grade limitation on, or an age limitation? It could happen at any level of the school system? Teachers will put in the grant applications, and then we'll provide as many grants as we're able, depending on the funding. Yeah, so no limitation. If you're a classroom teacher, and there's an EA in your classroom, if there's a project that you want to engage in that would meet the criteria, then submit the project. So all of that information will be going out to staff upon return to school in September. So we're just finalizing the application process right now. I think we will have an ongoing source of conversation, because I'm intrigued by this idea, and it would be interesting to hear what the projects look like a year from now. Yeah, when we meet in the fall, we can chat about the application process and some of the ideas that were accepted, for sure. Welcome that opportunity. That's great. That's great. Well, speaking of fall, my question for you is, what's happening in September? I hate to say this. This is June. As you said, kids are focused on the June track meets, the graduations, all that stuff, the good stuff, and summer, but hey, fall's coming. So what's happening in the Catholic School Board in the fall? So in school board terms, it might be April or May, but here at the board office, we're thinking September. So planning for the fall is been well underway as we look at enrollment and look at students in classrooms. The board will receive the budget at our next board meeting. So we're well prepared and ready to move forward for the fall, and all of that planning is it's almost coming to an end, to be honest with you. So as we're ready to go on holiday and then come back and be ready to move into a new school year. So yeah. And the same holds for the school board, Lori. Do you take a summer break at all? Yeah, we take July. We meet again in August. We start our board meeting back in August, and any committee meetings that are required, sort of policy reviews, stuff like that. Really, we get July. That's about it. We enjoy July, and we're right back to business in August. We may drift a little bit away to vacation mode, but I think the business of the board carries on. Sure. We're hoping for a good regular start to September this year, so fingers crossed. Yeah. Gary, in the Blue Water Board, there is always a staff
change list, for want of a better word, that comes out. Is that true in the Catholic Board as well? People get moved around about this time of year?
Yeah, we have a few principals moving schools. We have a few retirements. We had our retirement celebration last week where we honored our retirees. So there's always a little bit of movement, and that's already sort of all been announced. And I think for the most part, staffing is getting close to being complete, and we'll be ready to go. So we're looking forward to the new school year in September.
Now, I presume kindergarten registration is all taken care of.
Yeah, we've had our welcome to kindergarten programs in each of our schools. They've been happening. Getting ready to welcome our newest students. We've seen a little bit of increase in kindergarten enrollment, which is exciting for the fall. So,
Well, that's good to their increasing enrollment is always good, no matter where the school system is. There's a whole lot of implications for that, because increasing enrollment means increasing provincial grants, but it also means maybe some changes in the tax rate. But that's kind of a much more complicated conversation than I'm prepared to go into. But I was going to ask you too. You mentioned that there is an increased enrollment at the entry level. To what does that due? Is that due to people moving into the area? Is it due to community changes? What have we had a baby boom 4, 5, 6 years ago?
Yeah. I think it's maybe a little bit of a combination of all of those factors. We know our community is growing. We're a smaller school board, so we're seeing slight growth. It's not large growth, probably around 50 students total in elementary. So again, not a huge enrollment increase, but a steady increase. So I think it's a combination of all of those factors. I don't think we could place it down to one. We know there's been some movement into the community during COVID. So we're seeing a slight increase, which is always good. Always happy to see an increase in enrollment as opposed to a decrease in enrollment. But we know some areas of our community are definitely growing.
Great. Now, there's the St. Mary's will be replaced, so to speak. Where is the planning for the replacement at St. Mary's High School, or the St. Mary's School? It's not just the high school, of course.
So at this point in time, as you know, MPP Walker, before the election, was able to announce the funding of a new school build. Before that, we had already received funding to do an addition. So it was determined that at the end of the day that we needed to build a building. So right now, we're in the process of doing this. The board has a site selection committee. So that committee is up and running right now. And then from there, it's in the process. So we've got the funding. It's been announced, site selection, and then we continue to move forward. So we're hopeful, fingers crossed, that we will be able to open a new secondary school within 3 to 4 years, again, depending on all the other factors that are in place. So it's exciting. It's a little bit of ways yet, but it's definitely exciting and good news for our community, especially the community of Owen Sound. It's desperately needed.
Now, you said site selection committee. Does that mean that you will either stay on the current site or seek a new site?
We will be seeking a new site. There's not enough acreage on that site to build a new high school. So the board has a committee responsible for selecting sites for school build. So as per board policy, that committee is up and running right now. Yeah.
That'll be very interesting to watch, because that's not a piece of information I had heard before, because there's a lot of history in that school, and a lot of history in that school site.
Yes. Yeah. So the school will remain open. So part of this funding bucket means that we have to have 4 school sites in the community. So the high school is being built for 9 to 12 school, and then we'll need to engage our community as to what the other grade configurations of those schools will look like. So we've got a lot of work to do. It's going to be exciting times in Owen Sound as we look into the future as to how we will deliver programs and services for our Owen Sound families.
Well, it's really interesting because I had this ongoing joke with our former MPP Bill Walker about the Markdale Hospital, because he was instrumental in getting that off the ground, and as he retired, the hospital is out of the ground, and he will be there for he trusts for the dedication in a year or two when it's complete. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to say the same thing to Rick Byers, our new MPP. Who knows? Yeah. Now, Laurie, how does the board engage in the? I presume you don't do the detail planning, but you have oversight of the new school process. Is that right?
Somewhat. I'm part of the site selection committee. Our vice chair is. There's lots of input. Really, as Gary mentioned, we're just in the early stages here. Planning will follow. We kind of discuss and approve along the way where needed within the scope of the ministry's approval. I guess, at the end of the day, the money ties everyone's hands to that amount, and we will work within the confines of that space. Right now, with both the vice chair, Norm, and myself, we represent the board for the site selection committee with others, and it's pretty exciting. Early days, David. We look forward to talking about it more in the future, but early days is very exciting. We're really happy. Owen Sound was desperate for a good space for our students. So,
how many students, Norm, Gary, are in that school right now?
So there's just over 1,000 students in the building, and the building is regulated for just over 600 students. So it's about 156% capacity. So it's desperately needed, for sure.
Yeah. And if I understand correctly, it'll be a new high school, and then the existing building will remain as a primary school?
Well, maybe? that's the maybe. So that's the conversation we need to engage our stakeholders in so we'll have 3 sites in the Owen Sound area, and what will those sites look like, and how will they deliver programs and services? And I say that, so what will the grade configurations be within those schools? And that's the conversation that we'll need to have. So kind of working through our processes here. So we'll get the building going, and then we'll sit down with everyone in the community and figure out how we'll best utilize our sites for our students and also for community partners, because we do have a lot of community partners who we work with. In particular, daycare spaces are a premium. It's an important consideration and a pertinent consideration that we'll need to consider. So I offer that as an example of a community partner that would be working with.
Actually, it's what it sounds like is, Laura, you folks are doing the ultimate Sudoku.
The ultimate
Sudoku puzzle?
Yes. Yes, one line at a time. Or
the ultimate Wordle to try and come up with something.
We'll let you know how that works out.
Okay. Oh, yes. Well, one of the questions, speaking of new students, one of the questions that is on people's minds, of course, is the situation in the Ukraine. And Ukraine has obviously is a nation in conflict, and how I have heard that there are a small number of students from Ukraine here in this area. Do you have students from Ukraine yet in the Catholic system?
Students can register in the system that's been approved by the Ministry of Education, and I'm not aware to date if we've had any Ukrainian students register in our school district. We know that there are a few families within the area, but I don't think we have any registrations at this time.
Mm-hmm. Language may well be an issue.
For sure. And we have supports in terms of our ELL our consultants who would provide ELL support for our students in language acquisition and to support families who transition. We've had refugee families, et cetera, in the past, so we would be well prepared to rally around a family and make sure they settle in and give them the supports that they need. I sit on the immigration partnership as well, and that's been a great source of resource for families who are moving in. And I know they had a presentation about that at their most recent meeting. So not only us as a school district are supporting Ukrainian families who are coming in, but the broader Bruce and Grey community are moving forward and reaching out and ensuring that families land safely and have the supports that they need to transition. So the immigration partnership has been a great addition to our community.
I also saw in the board minutes some reflection of activities that the students are doing to support and be aware of the conflict in the Ukraine, so that this is not just something that happens over there. It's connected to us.
Yeah, I think an important piece for us as a faith community is Catholic social teaching, and that we are called to support one another and through challenging times. So you saw within the minutes what each of the schools are doing, whether it's wearing balloon knowledge as a sign of respect and a sign that we're aware, to raising funds, food, resources. So it sort of spreads the gamut. I know St. Mary's High School, they raised a fair amount of funds, and I believe they sent it to Red Cross or to Development and Peace, other organizations who do that outreach work. So it's a very tangible and important piece that our teachers and our staff are leading with their students to understand the implications of the broader context and the broader world outside of Bruce and Grey counties.
Yes, because Pope Francis has been quite clear in his comments about the war in Ukraine. And you mentioned Catholic social teaching, and this is probably a very good example of how the Catholic social teaching might be applied.
Yeah, for sure. And our students and staff like to do tangible signs. It's great to talk about the issue, but we want to take action. And as I've mentioned before, whether our students are writing a letter or having conversations with principals or being part of a BIPOC group at each of their schools or being part of Student Senate, those are tangible ways that our students can bring their faith life to action. And we encourage our students to do that. And our staff are amazing at all the different things that take place in all of our schools to ensure that our students are living out our Catholic social teachings.
And the community can support these efforts as well if they're aware of them.
Yeah, for sure. All of those communications go home in weekly newsletters. Principals will put those out, so our families are fully aware. They got to be reading their weekly newsletters from their principals to make sure. I know there's a lot coming in, but those are really great opportunities to hear what's going on in the school. For sure.
Sure. Now, Lori, one of the other issues that I'm sure that will be in your mind over the summer is the state of labor negotiations with the province, because contracts are up for renewal. What is the role of the trustees in all of this?
We have the easier end of the job. All the negotiating and all the long, hard work, I would definitely credit to the board and the unions and our OCSTA. We approve the contracts at the end of the day, but a credit where it's due to our labor negotiating teams. They put in all of the hours and all of the work to bring everyone to a happy agreement, and we look forward to that too, David, in the fall. Everyone loves negotiation time, don't they?
Does that mean, Gary, you're not taking any vacation this summer?
I'm hoping to get some vacation time for sure. So contracts, there's two parts to contracts. One is the central terms that get negotiated centrally throughout the province, and then there's local negotiations. So that happens for each of our bargaining groups. So it's a long process, and I think those processes are going to start in the summer, but will heat up earnestly in the fall. And hopefully we can get to smooth resolutions. But they're important conversations, and there's a good process in place. And our trustees are well versed in that as well, and do a great job of supporting our team.
Well, one of the things that often happens is that we read in the media about the provincial level negotiations, and they may be heading into a flaming dumpster, but that's not necessarily the case. What's the best place, Gary, for people to keep abreast of where things are without getting into the polarities that we often find in the media or out there?
Well, I mean, the day-to-day conversation, I guess, around collective negotiations would be in the media, because they would be reporting centrally. If something is going to happen specifically here locally, then they're going to hear from me directly. During the last round of negotiations a couple of years ago, there were some challenging times as the parties came to resolution, and we had to let parents know about, possibly work stoppages or, an action day. So they would definitely hear from me directly if that was going to happen. But we're in the early stages of the process and very hopeful that given all that we've gone through COVID, et cetera, that negotiations will proceed smoothly and we'll be able to come to some resolution. But keeping up to day on through the media, and then looking for communication directly from the board and the board of trustees around how they're proceeding at the central and local terms.
That's good to hear, because like I say, often there's a lot of misinformation that gets out there, and so the horse's mouth, so to speak, has your signature over it.
Yeah, usually in those situations, either I will communicate, and lots of times Lori and I will communicate together, so parents know that this is the voice of the trustees and this is the voice of the system. So they know that we're working in partnership to ensure that families have the right information at the right time, and they're not getting it from, they're going to hear about it at the hockey rink and dance and skating lessons, et cetera. But there's a place to go to get the information that they need as they move forward. So, but we're hopeful, fingers crossed, that this time around that folks will be able to negotiate smoothly, and we won't have to be sending out a lot of letters and memos. So that's our hope.
That's great. That's great to hear. And one last thing, because we're almost out of time, and that's something that very quickly, Lori, are you going to run again?
Yes, I am. I threw my nomination, my name in the hat, if you will, for the Kincardine Brockton area again. So it'll be a interesting summer. We'll see who runs, who doesn't, and what the dynamic is. I guess the best I can say is everybody get out and vote in the fall. Vote for your Catholic education.
October 24th is municipal election day, and you elect a school trustee depending on your taxpayer status. So that's great. That's great. So
shameless plug to make sure you're registered to your proper Catholic board for your voting purposes and tax purposes.
Very much so. That's a very good point, because and you only need to contact your municipal office to make sure you're on the voters list. So make sure you yeah. And well, best wishes to you when we get to the voting day, and we'll hopefully see you when we talk again, because that's so important. And I want to thank the both of you for being a part of the conversation and politically speaking today. Gary O'Donnell and Lori Castri, who are the Director of Education and Chair of the I almost said Blue Water, but it's Bruce Gray Catholic School Board. Thank you both, and thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Looking for the best way to get the Major League Baseball games you want to watch? Rogers Super Sports Pack has you covered. With MLB Extra Innings, you'll have